Sometimes we just can't do it. I can't go on. I must go on. In this episode, I'm going to reflect on the really deep, dark hole that I feel that I'm in right now. I'm exhausted. I'm frustrated. I'm kind of at wit's end. And I thought instead of burying that, instead of trying to go on with a regular episode, I would just kind of talk through that. And maybe it'll be useful for me. Maybe you'll find something useful in that dark reflection. You'll be the judge anyways.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 197 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. As you might have guessed in the little teaser opening, this is going to be a solo episode. I was struggling today on Thursday, June 17th, as I am recording this, and that's the day that I normally put aside several hours to edit the podcast for the weekly feed. And I'm struggling, and I was getting frustrated and angry and anxious and all of those things. And I found myself spiraling. What I wanted to do, instead of hide, instead of pretend, which is something I normally do, instead of putting on the brave face, instead of lying to you or putting on that social media persona that we so often project out into the world, that everything's perfect, everything's sunshine, everything's rainbows. I wanted to just share a little bit more intimately with you. And so in this episode, I'm gonna talk myself through what I'm feeling, why I think I'm feeling it, and in some ways, what I'm doing right now is part of the resolution. And that's coming up later in this episode, so I'm going to forego comments from recent episodes. I'm going to forego personal update because this whole episode is very personal. But I am going to do a read from this episode's sponsor, and then we'll get right back into Mark sitting on the therapy couch talking to Mark, listening on the therapy couch, and of course you all sitting there and listening, and potentially reflecting on some of these things that may come up now and again in your own writer journey, in your own writer struggle. But like I said, here's a word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices is a platform for authors that allows authors the ability to get their audiobooks out into a global market. More than 43 retail and library platforms. You have the choice. You can distribute to one of them, you can distribute to all of them, and you can set the price at the majority of those platforms. You also have the opportunity to set a different library price, and you have the ability to enter into particular promotions with places like Chirp and Apple Books and Nook. With Findaway Voices, you can find a professional narrator to work with from a collection of thousands of narrators around the world. Or if you have the audiobook already, you can upload the audio directly, setting your own prices. They have some helpful online materials and sources and videos to help you figure out how to get that audio ready for prime time. And what I love about Findaway Voices is the team. They're a committed team of passionate, dedicated professionals. I love working with them, and I love the things that they've come up with, such as the Voices Share program, which is a royalty share program with your narrator, where instead of paying the narrator the full per hour rate, you pay them 50% of the rate, and then you split proceeds with a narrator. And you're not required to be exclusive to any one platform when you take advantage of this. If you want to see all the different ways that you can use Findaway Voices as an author to leverage your audiobook empire, you can check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. Okay, so this is unscripted me just talking, deciding, not stressing out, stressing out, but not stressing out, and deciding, no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn on the mic and I'm just going to talk, and I'm going to talk my way through this. And if it's uncomfortable for you, my apologies, but I just wanted to share where I was going through and how I was kind of struggling over the past few hours. Now, let me just go back a little bit. It's Thursday, June 17th, 2021, as I'm recording this. And I've had a pretty busy, pretty productive week, actually, for the most part. For the most part, I have been consistently, I only missed 2 days in the month of May and up until today, writing every morning on my next Canadian werewolf book. That's been very satisfying. I feel so alive when I'm writing, when I'm actually creating. Whether it's nonfiction or fiction, I have a really good feel. Now, fiction's a little bit, it has a different kind of satisfaction, because nonfiction writing can be all kinds of things that aren't actually related to books. It's the nonfiction book writing that really drives me more than anything else. Joanna Penn and I started work this week on The Relaxed Author, and have done it in such a fascinating way. We had I think it's been 3 hours in total, maybe a little bit more than 3 hours in total so far, and we've got more coming tomorrow on the 18th. And those have been absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to share and talk about the process of that. But it's just this unique collaborative process, and it's this really great non-stressed, sort of a relaxed approach that we're taking. And I'll talk about that on a different day, because I don't want to sully that amazing work that we're doing together with the darkness that I'm in right now. So I've had a busy week of a lot of meetings related to consulting and work with Draft Digital and work with authors one-on-one, as well as other personal projects that I've been working on. And let me tell you where I am right now as I'm talking through this. Thursdays I usually reserve for the podcast. Actually, taking some of the interviews that I've done, planning out what it's going to be, listening back to the podcast, editing, cleaning some stuff up, and then making notes, doing the show notes. And then thinking through what it was that I learned, or what it was that discussion made me reflect on. Now, I'm looking at my whiteboard right now, and I have 5 really great interviews in the can that have been done over the last 6 or 7 weeks. And I actually started working on 2 different ones. I loaded the audio to Audacity, which is how I do this. I started listening to them, and I just stopped. I wasn't paying attention. It reminded me of when I was in high school and I was frustrated over the girl who wouldn't look my way or dumped me, or whatever the tragic teenage angst was that I was going through. And you'd be looking at a page of Shakespearean text and you realize that you've read the page 16 times and you haven't ingested it. And I realized I'm not even listening to the answers from the dialogue. I'm not even giving my guest. Now, when I was doing the live interview, I was giving their attention, but it's been weeks. I was not even giving my guest the respect that they deserve. And so I said, I can't do this interview right now. And I put it aside, and I pulled in another interview, and I started to edit, and I did the same thing, and I realized it's not them, it's me. There's something wrong. And I feel exhausted. This morning I got up at the regular time, 5:30 in the morning, sat down to go and get my writing done, which is the first thing I do, but I decided for some bizarre reason to go look at some emails from some clients that I'm working with one-on-one. I ended up doing some client work initially. Then I started to do some other logistical admin style tasks. And then it was time to wake up Liz, get her coffee on. That usually takes place halfway in my writing session. So I get a bit of a break. I get up for an excuse to stretch my legs, put her coffee on, get some coffee for myself, and then go back and finish my writing. And I never got into my writing. And so I started off in a really bad place early this morning. Liz and I did a live show. So we do a live show called Distance Daily. She is a principal at a K-6 school. And I've been Ed McMahon, her co-host, since they've gone back to distance in lockdown, which they're doing in the province of Ontario here. And it's more like a 15-minute virtual meeting with teachers. It's not mandatory. It's just a chance for team building and community and sharing things. So we were looking at like baby pictures, and they were trying to guess whose baby picture was who and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun team building stuff, and it's fun. I'm the Ed McMahon character. If you're too young to know who he is, he was Johnny Carson's sidekick, and Johnny Carson was a late night talk show host, probably one of the big late night talk show hosts for the longest running period. The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was the name of it. If if you're not old like me and remember actually watching it. But yeah, I'm the sidekick with the dad jokes and the funny stuff and the shtick, and it's been a really, really great show, and it's always fun. I love it. I love doing stuff like that with Liz because it's a real cool chance for me to get more insights into what she does, and I think the staff kind of because I'm a little bit quirky. I'm the guy with the skulls and the bookshelves. And I'm the horror writer, and so that's sort of a different world for them too. So that kind of picks me up, even if I'm in a funky mood. You know what? For 15 minutes, I'm doing this live broadcast, through StreamYard broadcast to a private YouTube channel that only the teachers and staff at the school have access to, and so that always picks me up. But then I finished it, and I went right back into. I had to jump into a bunch of different meetings. And just to let you know, I'm distracted right now because there's cat hair on the microphone. it's waving as I'm talking back and forth, so I'm really distracted by it. So I was just trying to pick it off while I was talking. Multitasker I am. But I went into some meetings, and they're all good meetings. I did an interview where I had to be on and inspirational and energetic and I just finished a meeting I had not been expecting, which was sort of like a business development thing. It's something that's really important that I'm very passionate about. But it took a lot out of me to put that mindset back on. And I realized, I'm like, oh my God, the day's practically over and I haven't even done the podcast. And this is it usually takes a good 3 to 4 hours to do this properly. And I was reflecting on the fact that since I started this podcast in January of 2018, weekly podcast, I have never missed a Friday episode. I have occasionally posted late on a Friday, but I've never missed a Friday. And that's usually because of travel or some other things. I've even posted multiple episodes per week, which is why if you do the math and you go back from this week to January 18th, you'll see that I probably stuck in a half dozen extra episodes. I shouldn't be at 197 yet if it was only just weekly. But I've never missed that. And it's really important for me to keep that track record. As exhausted as I am, and there have been times people have reached out to me to say, wow, you sounded really down. And that happens to me. I do have a bit of a history with some of the darkness, and it is something that is genetic, and it's in my family. And I probably I feel it from time to time, and I understand when the people who get frustrated. When you say, well, just cheer up, put on a grin, because I do that a lot. I do, well, often, it doesn't matter what I'm going through, I will put on that persona, and that's something that I've been very proud of. Just like I will, in the heat of Florida at Novelist Inc., I will throw on my sports coat. I actually have it on right now because I was just in a meeting, so I'm going to take it off because you can't see me. Now I'm wearing my Stark t-shirt, branded t-shirt, but I don't need to be wearing the sport coat. Oh, that's better. It's nice and it's easier. But I thought I was feeling this funk, and I'm going to go through with it, and I'm going to put out a podcast episode. But I thought I don't want to put the podcast episode out, and I can put on a fake voice, I can put on the persona, I can smile, happy, be fun, whatever. And in some ways, when I'm acting fun, when I put a smile on my face, pretend smile on my face, I sometimes can't help but get a real smile on my face. And it's kind of somewhat happening now as I'm talking, because it feels like I'm talking to myself, but I know that I'm talking to you, and I know that you're listening. Or you know that you're listening. I don't know that you're listening now as I'm saying this, but you know right now that you're listening. This weird time-lapse thing that happens, the time travel that happens from when I'm recording this and when you're listening to it. But I thought it wouldn't be fair to just try and put this on and pretend like nothing was bothering me, because the longer the day went on, the darker I started to feel myself spiral. And I can be really destructive when I get into this kind of funk, because things that I worked hard for, I can let go. And there are things I am not going to compromise on. I am not going to compromise on not putting out an episode this week, even if it's this me self-therapy session of talking through this funk. I am not going to compromise on not getting 10,000 steps in today, which means I need to dedicate at least an hour sometime today to going out and walking. And I have been enjoying listening to audiobooks on this walk. I was actually considering recording this on the walk, but I do know with the wind and the mic and stuff like that, it was going to be pretty crappy quality. So I thought, no, I'm going to do it here. And when I finish this, I'm going to go for a walk. And then when I come back, I'm going to edit and clean up the audio. And anytime I clear my throat like this, I'm not going to clean this one up. I'll leave this one in here. Normally, I would clean that up. I did back away from the mic, so hopefully it wasn't too annoying for you. But I thought, this is something that happens to me on a semi-regular basis, and I know it happens to friends of mine. I know it happens to other creatives. And I thought, instead of hiding it and pretending that it doesn't happen, I wanted to share it in case it's something that you struggle with as well, so that you know that you're not alone, so that you know that this is something that happens probably more regularly than people are willing to admit, because people are often afraid of admitting a weakness or where they're not perfect. And I'm guilty of that in many ways. A lot of my social media posts are very much going to be Mark doing dad jokes and skeleton humor and all kinds of silly parodies and all those things. Obviously, they're very highly curated. But the challenge of that, the frustration with that, and it's the same reason why, there's so much anxiety, is we're all looking at everyone else's perfect worlds and perfectly edited pieces of material that they put out there, and we're comparing our imperfections, we're comparing our frustrations and our darknesses to their best edited, tweaked, let's say, in quotes, photoshopped worlds. And we do know, we have to know that that's not real, but it's really, really hard, and we catch ourselves comparing. So I also was looking at, I needed to share with you, I did the New in Books promotion through Written Word Media, which cost me $299. And it was a complete and miserable failure. I think maybe I sold 12 copies that I think I can attribute to that promo. 99 cents, so 35 cents. You do the math. Let's say that I made maybe $3.50 on that, and it cost me $300. And I was looking at that. I was looking at the frustration and just how exhausted I am. And I was just shaking my head and going, what the hell? Wow. And I know, I haven't talked to Written Word Media about it, but I do know they have a really good policy about that. And I want to reach out to Grant, who is my contact there, and say, yeah, so here's the thing. This didn't work. I've had way better results just doing a bargain booksy. Why was this even worse when it costs so much more? And I just, not to be mean or whatever, I just want to understand it. And I want them to understand how I experienced it as an author, but I can't do it when I'm in a funk like this. I need to kind of realign myself. But let's get back to the funk. Let's get back to the darkness. I don't know if pushing through and continuing to do this is the right thing to do. I talked about destructive behavior. I enjoy alcohol. I enjoy beer. Whiskey, all kinds of things like that. And I know I'm going to probably have a few more than I should tonight. I've tried really hard to stick to the fact that if I do not walk 10,000 steps in a day, I can't have a drink. And I've been able to stick to that for several weeks now, and feeling good about it too, because it's actually helping. My pandemic weight was 246.8. I caught myself at. I think I'm now down to 244 after a lot of hard work. Again, hard work meaning I'm not really restricting my diet too much. I'm just trying to exercise more. I'm not even up to running again. I'm just doing the walking for now. I think I need a little bit more walking to get back into things. And I know that the adrenaline from the run really helps me. It really helps my mood, because that I don't know what it is about the physical activity, but sometimes the physical activity really kicks my brain back into the right place. And I guess what's really frustrating about today, and the fact that I didn't get the writing done, is I was making such great progress on my Canadian werewolf novel. I was so pumped, so high, so enthusiastic about some of the stuff that I just wrote, some of the scenes that I wrote. They were hard scenes to write. And then this morning, it fell out from under me, and I did it to myself, of course. But then I was spiraling in this funk, as I keep talking about. So back to the pushing through. I thought for you, the listener, if I would share with you, maybe you can tell because I'm all over the bloody place. My mind is not stringing together some cohesive thoughts, but I thought if I can share where I am and in the dark place that I'm sitting right now in an honest way, without trying to put on airs or pretensions or pretend everything's happy rosy. Now, everything is happy rosy in general. There is nothing about my spectacular, privileged life that I have to complain about. I have a partner who is so supportive, so amazing. I have an awesome kid. I have amazing friends and family who would do anything for me. I'm very, very lucky. So it's not that I'm woe is me in any way, shape, or form. I know how lucky and privileged I am. But when you're in a dark place, when you're thinking about the things you want to do, I look at the tasks I have to do. I actually looking at the lists that I have and realize that I had 4 hours, well, not anymore because I ended up sacrificing one of them for a meeting, but I had 4 hours today that were not spoken for that I would normally have done. So if I didn't do the podcast, why didn't I get these other things knocked off my list? And then I start looking at the things that don't get done, and then I start to beat myself up even more. And then I think, well, this is useless. Why am I even wasting my time? Why am I even doing this? And that's the thing that I'm struggling with right now. And why I wanted to share where I was with that. Not for sympathy, but just so you can understand that you'll hear a smile in my voice. Hey, Reflectives, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast. Any of those things. That is a genuine thing. I actually am happy to say hi and hey and thank you for listening and all of those things. But I also feel if I do that and I don't admit where it's hard, maybe it makes it harder for someone else who's having a hard time and go, well, Mark's never had to deal with this. Mark does deal with this. Mark has regularly dealt with those dark places. Mark worries because he likes his alcohol so much that alcoholism does run in my family. And it is something I'm aware of and very consciously nervous about because I really, really, really like alcohol. And I have friends who can't drink alcohol anymore because they have overcome an addiction. And I'm very conscious about what I end up doing sometimes when I get into that funk is I tend to lean on those things. I tend to lean on... I lean on acting. I lean on persona. I lean on... And I think I've talked about this in previous episodes that go way back. Is putting that... I'm flicking this ring, my dad's ring that I'm wearing on my right ring finger, not the left one. That's preserved for wedding. But this ring, and sometimes I flick it as a reminder of when I need to be a particular persona, when I need to put on that mask, when I need to put on that whatever, and I need to put on that presence. And that has carried me for a significant amount of time. And sometimes putting that mask on, sometimes getting up and just driving myself through something is going to make the difference. And so let me explain. I started to say this early in this podcast, but let me explain how and why I'm recording this completely unscripted, just off the top of my head. Because I'm feeling like I've never really talked about this. I've never really shared this in any way. I have had conversations with folks who are really close to me about this type of thing, but I've never really publicly talked about this. And I believe that recognizing I don't have 3 hours in me, I don't have 3 hours to edit and clean up and do show notes and all the things that I need to do, that I have to do, because it's the bar I've set for myself on the podcast. I'm not going to be able to do it justice. I'm not going to be able to do comments justice, or I'm not going to be able to do my guest justice or the reflection or any of those things because I'm not in the right headspace. And that's not fair to the guests that I have on the show, and that's not fair to you as the listener. So if, for example, the people who decided not to listen to this because it's like, oh, Mark rambling, I'm good. I was hoping to get a guest. But I needed to get an episode done because that's the bar I've set, and I'm not going to miss it. That's a non-negotiable. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to turn the mic on. I'm going to start talking, and I'm going to produce probably a shorter episode. I'm already at 28 minutes as I'm looking at the timer here. But I just wanted to share where that was. And I'm starting to feel better because all the cleanup is going to be is, so when I finish this recording, I don't have to do an additional reflection. I'm probably going to do some sort of outro that I'm probably going to record just sort of somewhat separately. But I'm feeling, instead of I'm at the bottom of the well and I'm looking and I can barely see the light at the top, I'm now realizing that I've kind of climbed or floated or whatever it is pretty close to the top, because now that overwhelming feeling that I had when I started to talk through this, it's still there, but it's not as ominous as it was before, because I recognize that I don't have 3+ hours of editing and all that ahead of me. I have maybe half an hour, 45 minutes of work. So I've saved myself about 2 hours of work, and I can do that. I can do that. I got 45 minutes in me before I'm just going to collapse and exhaust and just veg, watch something, relax, do something fun, sort of mindless, and just enjoy. And I realize that I'm not going to be able to change the mood that I'm in. I'm not going to be able to completely dissolve that funk, the cloud, the darkness that's hanging over me. But removing one of the things that had been frustrating me, such as, oh my God, I'm not going to get an episode out this week. has actually helped me. It's helped me realize that maybe I didn't need to make it as complicated. Maybe I just needed to give it a shot, try something different, and put it out into the world. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen, really? You're listening to this and you're like, whoa, I don't need any of this crap, Mark. I got enough of my own stuff to deal with. Why should I be your non-paid therapist listening to this? And I suppose is that the worst thing that can happen? Is somebody's going to look at this and judge me? Okay. Right. Hey, I've been judged far worse in far worse situations in the past. So that's not a big deal. On the bright side of things, maybe somebody out there who's listening to this doesn't feel so alone and go, wow, okay. Never realized that you dealt with this. It's great to recognize that I'm not alone. And maybe some of the things I've said or done that I thought would be helpful, you go, yeah, not for me, I need to do something different. And that's cool too, because we all have different ways of dealing with the things that overwhelm us, with the moods that can overwhelm us or overcome us. And that's okay. There is no one way out of it. So for me, what I've often found is beneficial is just sometimes talking through this. So this what I'm recording right now is possibly what would probably be going on in my mind. A discussion I would be having with myself. It would probably be a lot more circular, like those conversations you have with yourself at 2 a.m. when you're trying to get back to sleep and you just can't stop because that part of your mind does it to you. So because I'm recording this knowing that someone else is going to be listening to it, I am trying, and you can see how unsuccessful I am, but I am trying not to repeat myself. I'm trying not to go through a lot of like boring, oh my God, get it over with, like out with it and move on, you dummy. But I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be genuine about that. So I'm standing as I record this, and I found that I have more energy when I stand, and sometimes just the physical activity of standing makes a difference. And I know that going for a walk, getting out into the beautiful sunny day, I am listening to Neil Peart's traveling music. I probably have about 45 minutes left in the book. I read it in 2004. I read the print edition. My son was a baby. There's a picture of me. I'll see if I can dig it up and share it on the show notes at starkreflections.ca. Alexander was a baby. I was exhausted all the time because I was working crazy hours. I was up with him at night because I did the nighttime feedings. Great bonding opportunity for me to spend time with him. And there I am sleeping. Alexander's sleeping beside me, and on the nightstand beside me is the physical copy of Traveling Music by Neil Peart. And it's interesting rereading that book in 2021, and I can't do the math. Well, Alexander's going to be 17, so I'm assuming it's 17 years. That is just so interesting, especially now that Neil has passed away, is listening to his memoir of his life in music and the music he listened to and the music he played. And it's just been such a great, I'm walking through different streets and neighborhoods. I try to take different paths that I've never taken before. Which is a little bit of a Neil Peart inspired thing. But I'm doing that as I'm listening to Neil and being re-inspired by his words. And actually, it's funny, just thinking about the fact that I get to very soon get up and go and listen to Neil is actually motivating me. It's like a treat that I'm giving myself. A treat where the treat is I get to go out and walk, and that endorphins are going to help me. The sun is going to help me. Seeing something different than these walls around me that I've been staring at all day is going to be different. And then when I get the task, when my Fitbit goes off that I've hit my goal and I start to head back home, I'm going to be able to treat myself with a beer. Maybe a glass of whiskey, maybe a little bit of both, maybe a Macallan, Scotch, Neil's favorite drink. toast him, to celebrate an amazing life and the inspiration that he gave me. So it's really funny, as I was just talking about that, as I was just thinking about Neil's book and how much it's invigorated me and how much his music has inspired me. Hell, maybe I'll just listen to some Rush and listen to these amazing lyrics that he has created. I think I'm starting to feel closer to that light at the top of the well. I'm starting to feel that. I'm feeling. It's interesting. I wasn't expecting. As I started to record this, I thought I was going to expect to say, okay, here's what I think I need to do. I'm going to go give it a shot. I'll let you know in the next episode. But as I was just thinking about, I'm starting to actually feel a warmth in me, which is really strange and wonderful at the same time. So, thanks for listening. I needed that. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. And yes, I'm pushing a little bit more energy into my voice than I can feel because I'm starting to feel a little bit better. I'm not there yet. There's still a lot overhanging me, but I know what I'm about to do. I'm about to go and do a walk and listen to a book I'm really enjoying. And I'm probably going to be finishing it tonight, which is also a feeling of satisfaction. So I'm getting something cool done. And I'm looking forward to talking to my friend Julie Strauss about it on her podcast, The Best Book Ever. And yeah, so this is the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you've listened through this, I hope it wasn't too boring, depressing, dark, disturbing, whatever. I just wanted to talk through some things, and I hope it didn't bore you to death. But I want to thank you for being a listener. I want to thank you for listening to this episode. I want to thank you for being a listener to the podcast in general. I want to say a huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys so much. I did, and I should mention this, I messaged my patrons. And I'm going to leave a link in the show notes over at starkreflections.ca for episode 197 that Joanna Penn and I, as I said, are writing the Relaxed Author. And we're doing a survey, and we're asking readers to tell us some of the things that they're not relaxed about or they're anxious about, or maybe even some tips. So there's a chance for you. We're going to be going through there looking for some tips and stuff. There's an opportunity, if you're willing to be quoted in the book, to be included in that, to help maybe inspire other writers, or in other cases is just making sure that we're covering the bases of all the things that can stress out authors, because we've got quite a substantial list. But it's always good to balance that off. So I'll be leaving a link for that in the show notes as well. But I did send it to my patrons earlier, and I want to say thank you to all my patrons for supporting the podcast. Thanks for supporting the podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. And I do appreciate the patrons supporting this. Your support means so much to me. I've got something coming up with an opportunity for my patrons associated with Clark Chamberlain, who is a great guy, who I've used as sort of developmental style story stuck consulting. And it's going to be an opportunity for one of my patrons to get a free consultation with Clark, courtesy of me, or courtesy of my awesome patrons. I've basically taken some of the funding after paying for some stuff for the podcast, and trying to give it back to you, the awesome patron community, so you can get an opportunity to work with Clark. So that'll be coming out probably in the next week or so, as I try to figure out the logistics with Clark and how we're gonna organize that. I'm also as I do this, I'm also looking at episode 200 is coming up in 3 episodes, and I've been struggling. This is one of the other things that was leading me down the dark hole is, I should really do something. It's episode 200. I should really do something special. Maybe I should do, like, I have guests send in their own reflections. Maybe I should do like a live chat and bring in my patrons, or bring in some guests who want to be there, and we can just kind of talk about things we've learned, in the last year or two or whatever it is, and just share and help each other out. And And then I get all these grandiose ideas and go, oh, but then I have to organize it. Then I have to plan things and I have to actually do things in advance rather than go, oh, it's Thursday. I better get an episode out for Friday, which is my modus operandi. So I have episode 200 coming up. I was wanting to do something special. I'm not sure. If you have any ideas, hey, hit me up. I'm all ears. And anyways, again, I'm rambling again because none of this has been scripted or even bullet formed or anything like that. But again, thanks for listening. You do not have to be a patron to support the podcast. You can support the podcast by leaving a review on the podcatcher of your choice. An honest, authentic review would be appreciated. What you like, what you don't like. I'm all for all of it. And you can also share this podcast with someone that you think would find value in my Stark Reflections or my Stark Ramblings, whatever you want to call this episode. Again, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Thanks for being with me for this episode. Thanks for being a listener to the podcast. So until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.